Welcome, David.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thank you for being your own stand-in here. I promise, well, hopefully, I can't make too many promises, but hopefully next time we'll have a stand-in for you.
Yeah, well, maybe when I hit the big time, we can do that.
Exactly, exactly. So David, tell me your first memory ever of the Daytona 500.
My first memory is watching from the house. When my dad was racing some, I was probably a little too young to go to the Daytona 500. So, you know, I'm probably 5 or 6 years old, and I can remember it was a big deal around the Ragan household on that February, on a Sunday afternoon. And I think Sterling Marlin won one of the first Daytona 500s I can remember watching. And I just remember, yeah, it was a big deal. Everybody around the house, we probably rushed home from church to turn the TV on and watch the 500 that day.
Nice. So your dad raced in a couple of 500s. Did you have any kind of idea, you know, at that early age, like what the race actually meant, just because you had a, you know, first degree, just from his experience? Like, did he kind of say, like, this is the Super Bowl of NASCAR?
He never really talked about it being the Super Bowl of NASCAR or kind of the biggest race, but you just kind of knew that everyone got hyped up for the Daytona 500. There was just a little different feel, whether it be, you know, on an afternoon, Sunday afternoon, watching the Daytona 500, my first Daytona 500 attending. It was just a little different than all the other races. So I think it's one of those things that you don't have to talk about, that you just kind of know that it is a big race. The first one of the year, all the drivers and teams and everyone's probably on pins and needles. They want to get off to a good start, but it is our biggest race of the season. So it's a big weekend, and I can remember, you know, just feeling the energy, whether you're there as a fan watching, driving in the Daytona 500, or just watching on TV.
So going back to what you mentioned there, the first time you attended Daytona 500, what was that like?
Yeah, the first time I attended the Daytona 500, I was already racing a Legends car. We went down for some of the Winter Series races they have during speed weeks. I think we raced at a little track in Orlando and another little racetrack somewhere around New Smyrna Beach. So we raced a little bit, and I remember staying over on that Sunday watching. I think it was 1998 when Dale Earnhardt won his first Daytona 500, but I wasn't there to watch the finish because we had to drive home so I could go to school on Monday. So, you know, I remember watching the first, you know, maybe 100 laps or something like that, and then we had to leave and listen to the rest of it on radio.
Nice. So, you know, going up through the rankings, like the Legends cars and the late models, once you reached the top level of NASCAR, the Sprint Cup Series, what was your first ever Daytona 500 racing in the Sprint Cup Series?
So my first Daytona 500 was in 2007, and I was a rookie that year in the Nationwide Series and in the Cup Series. So it was a big weekend for me, and I remember we qualified third. We started on the front row for the duels on that Thursday, led some laps. We ended up getting involved in a wreck, so had to bring our backup car, started in the back for the Daytona 500, and it was kind of a roller coaster weekend. We ended up finishing fifth in my first Daytona 500, and it was kind of a weird weekend because we had so many highs, we had some lows after wrecking that car on Thursday, but then to walk out of there with a top five, and I think it was my third Sprint Cup race in the Daytona 500, I kind of thought this was going to be easy. I said, you know, this is pretty simple, but then quickly realized that that was a very good day that, you know, I won't ever forget.
Nice. Well, I mean, racing obviously has its roller coaster rides, right?
Yeah.
Both when you're flipping through the air in an accident, or, you know, just the kind of the emotional turmoil that it puts, you know, throughout the season. Yeah. So you're known for being a very patient driver, and I mean, what is it like when you've got 20 laps to go? You've really got a chance to win it. I mean, if you're in the top 15, you've got a chance to win it. I mean, because anything can change lap to lap. So what is it like lap to lap trying to keep your patience while you're racing and you are in a position to maybe win the 500?
Yeah, I think in the last few laps you realize that you are in position to win, and for me, I try not to think about what's going to happen if we can win. I try not to get too excited. I try to stay focused and just drive, you know, lap after lap after lap, and it's hard to do that because, you know, if you are leading and your spotter tells you 10 to go, you can't help but think, man, if we can win this thing, how excited I'm going to be. I can't wait to see everyone, what's going to happen. But I try to focus on, 9 laps to go, 8 laps to go, and just kind of break the race down lap by lap. And it is a little overwhelming. To win some other races, it's a big deal, but it's just not the same feeling as the Daytona 500. So I can only imagine, what that last white flag lap, going through turns 3 and 4, if you were leading, would feel like. But that is a tough thing to do, is to not think about the actual win, just trying to get there.
Yeah, I mean, anything changes, So, your dad, your dad, Ken Ragan, a long history of racing, so you came from a family of racing background. Before your first Daytona 500, was there any kind of advice, or, obviously he was your mentor when you were growing up, so what kind of advice did he give you before the race?
Dad has always been there for me whenever I needed something, but when I got to the stock cars when I was 17, 18 years old, he kind of stepped back a little bit, and he, put me with good people, whether it was a crew chief or a guy that, spotter when I was younger. Obviously being at Roush Racing when I was a rookie, having some good coaches around me was important. So Dad kind of stepped back, and he always formed an opinion, and I would usually hear about it after the races, what I did wrong. But I think the biggest thing that my dad, talked about in the 500, hey, it's a long race. You're not going to win the race on the first lap or the first pit stop, but you can certainly lose the race that early. So I think he tried to just, talk about the length of the race, the opportunities for good and bad things to happen, and try to be patient.
Perfect. Well, David, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
David Ragan, Sprint Cup Series driver, David Ragan.
Hi, I'm NASCAR driver David Ragan, and you just heard my story about my first Daytona 500, so now we want to hear about yours. You can let us know by using the hashtag #MyFirst500, and we want to check it out.